Council Committee of the Whole to order. Roll call, please.
Here.
Gustafson.
Here.
Hicks is absent. Fish.
Here.
Hager.
Here.
Kwame.
Here.
Fergus is absent. And Hassan.
Here.
We have a quorum. First item for discussion this morning is a Hoods for Heroes Awards, and we'll call on our Fire Chief, Ryan Muckow. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'll bring these props over with Brent and pass them around for you. This morning, we'll be looking for your acceptance or approval of from the Minnesota Firefighters Foundation. They were on site last week, and they brought to us 37 protective hoods that we wear for firefighting duties. And these hoods are a difference from what we've been using for years versus what these new line of hoods are is a particulate ability that doesn't allow some of the smoke particles to come through, carcinogens and stuff up against the firefighter's neck and over their heads has become an increasing concern in recent years. And these, or this style of hood has a membrane in it that helps alleviate some of that pass-through of those carcinogens. So they're about $110 piece of equipment for our firefighters, so it was a pretty huge thing for the Minnesota Firefighter Foundation to provide that. So we're just looking for your approval of accepting this for our firefighters.
Well, thank you, Chief, and as always, thanks for all that you and your department do. Would someone like to offer that?
I will offer the approval.
Thank you,
second.
Jim. Thank you. Krista, any questions? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Nice to note they were made in the U.S. Bonus.
Next item on the agenda, we'll have a discussion on the Riverfront Pavilion policies, and we'll call on our Community Development Manager, Clara Beck. Good morning, Clara.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. So a few weeks ago, you had a subcommittee work on rules for our downtown Riverfront Pavilion, which is what we are now calling what was formerly known as the market structure. So we got a draft document from the League of Minnesota Cities that helped us work through this. Rolf was also involved, and Caroline from Council was also part of the discussion. So what you see before you is one of the latest drafts of those rules and regulations and also the rental agreement specific to the Riverfront Pavilion. I did go through yesterday and update a couple things. There was one sentence that was a little confusing, so I clarified that, which you can see in red up on the screen. And then we also have a section under rental fee, where in our discussions we had talked about if somebody's going to be using it for longer than 12 hours, do we incur further fees? Our discussion as a group was that no, so I'm assuming that language just accidentally got stuck in there, so that will also be removed unless anybody has any objections to that. But any questions about the rules and regulations themselves? I did get a call from a community member just to clarify the insurance requirements. You will note that both in the rules and regulations and in the agreement, there's language that gives the city the choice to say, yes, you need liability insurance, or no, you don't. The cases where liability insurance would likely be necessary would be for groups, 501c3s, et cetera, that already have their own insurance policies and would be hosting large events with hundreds of people. For your typical graduation party or birthday party, we will not be requiring any kind of liability insurance. So just to clarify that language. Any questions?
Scott, you have a question?
I have a few questions on several of the points in the rules. The first question would be under number 6 for food. Got the line glass containers are not allowed. I think that at the farmer's market, there's a lot of products that are sold in glass containers. Homemade pickles, for example.
Great point.
There may be a need to adjust the verbiage there to still allow for that, because I think we want people to be able to sell their homemade pickles. I think the goal of this apparently is just for people walking around with a drink, that it be in a plastic container.
Right.
So we might need to take a look at that.
Okay.
On 8 and 9, the capacity in the tables and chairs, do we really have 470 some chairs and 30 some tables stuffed into a storage room over there?
No, we likely will not have that number of tables and chairs. That's simply the, so we worked with the fire department to identify what the max amount of people could be, and those are the numbers. So our assumption is not that that many people will ever be sitting in the market structure. And yeah, we will not have that number of tables or chairs to accommodate that number of people.
Since number 9 says that setup and tear down is a responsibility of the user, I guess that's where if we're having to truck them in and truck them out, does the user have to drive the truck?
So we will,
And
sorry,
buy
I
that,
should
or
clarify
how's that
that. We
gonna
will have tables and chairs on site. We will not have 400 of them. I think, Guy, how many were we thinking we would have?
Tables and 130 some chairs.
Yeah. So the storage room that is there will hold that number, as far as we know, without having actually put tables and chairs in there at this point.
So if they need another couple hundred chairs, then it's on us to bring them and take them away?
It would be on the user. They would need to figure that out. So probably work with the rental
Probably.
store in town and,
Okay. Because the services says that it'll be not provided by the city, so then they just got to come up with it on their own.
correct.
On 10 and 11 for alterations in outdoor signage, that might be a tough one to police, since it'll be very common for people to want to put up banners on the building. And I wonder if it might be better to allow for a way to do it rather than to just say you can't and then fight at every single event.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about that. I think one of the ways that we're going to make it clear that there are other options for decorating the space other than using tape or nails or anything like that to hang things up is that we will do some staged event photos that show that you can, there are like tabletop banner holders, things like that that you can get that would not damage the structure. So we'll give some other options, and you're right, it would be difficult to police, but we would hope that people would have respect for the new building and not use tape and sticky materials all over.
And I think you're right to want to avoid that kind of thing. I'm thinking more along the lines of the banner at the top of the gable end of the thing facing the street, announcing, this whatever celebration event.
Right.
A plaque on a floor or on, a sidewalk thing it's not going to give the punch that an event is looking for to have something up on that gable end.
Right. I suppose we'll have to maybe cross that bridge when we get there, but we really don't want people affixing things with sticky items.
I think you're going to be fighting that a lot.
Probably.
And so we might want to think about that too.
Okay.
The last one was under 23. There's probably already laws on the books for this. The title is Restricting Use. I thought maybe Ralph would be here this morning to answer a question for me, but there's already laws on the books for what we can and can't do as a city. I'd rather this wasn't even in here. I don't know that we even need to say this. We ought to be able to say yes or no to whoever we want to say yes or no to. And whether or not it's spelled out in here, I would rather just delete Section 23 altogether and Section 24.
Okay. Well, we can talk with Rolf and maybe go through and make a few more changes and then bring it back to you guys on Monday night, if that
Yeah.
sounds good.
And I think I appreciate those comments, Scott, and I think we all hopefully understand this will be a working document too, as people get in there, and we're going to make
Absolutely.
changes to this to make sure it's user-friendly, works for the city, that the right equipment's there, et cetera. So appreciate the work, but is it acceptable to, look at some of those changes, have Rolf take a look at them,
Definitely.
and have the council have a final look and approve something that will be changed even then. Continue to be work in progress, but someone like
I think
to
that's
move that
a
we
good idea.
at least bring this to the council Monday night for consideration.
Modify, Your Honor. Second.
Thanks, Justin, thanks. Brent, any other questions this morning? Yes,
Can I
Lynn.
just clarify, Scott, did you say you'd rather have 23 and 24 removed? Or just 23?
I think you said 24 too.
I had to read it here, see which one it was.
She's asking if you wanted 24 removed as well, or just 23?
24 was the one I specifically would like to see removed. 23 could probably be modified somewhat, but between those two, I figured Ralph would probably have something to say about it.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to move this to the council with some modifications and discussion on Monday night. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item number 3 again is Claire Beck. And we will have a purchase offer on a city-owned property for discussion.
Probably should have looked at the agenda before I sat back down. Yes, so there is a resident in town who has been working with Mr. Mark Jorgensen down in our GMS office on a potential request to purchase some city property. It is adjacent to their current property, and at some point in the future, somebody within City Hall said, go ahead, you can plant and maintain on this piece of city property and use it essentially as if it is your own. At this point, they would like to make that official and purchase that property from the city. So they have offered $10,000 for it. Did I include a map? Maybe I didn't. Or did you guys get the LOI in here?
Just this letter.
Okay. I should have included a map, apologies. Anyway, I'm just trying to gauge the interest of the council to let go of a piece of property like this. The city would be maintaining it themselves kind of regardless, I guess. We haven't been since they've taken it on. So what are your feelings on something? I think there are a few cases in town where people are maintaining city property adjacent to their property. Just not in any kind of official capacity necessarily, but because it's close to them and they've worked it out in the past verbally.
I'm wondering if it might make sense to bring a map on Monday night so we can see like ingress, egress, other access from other property owners, the neighborhood, etc. I'm not familiar with the property, and it might make sense just before we go selling land. Maybe there's other options as far as an agreement. You know, we have agreements that go 99 years, etc. But maybe just to see those options before we sell.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was completely, again, I don't know, trapped by, or not trapped, but only accessible by this one property, that's completely different than if it's between two neighboring properties, and I don't know, that's my thought, but.
Yep, that sounds good to me. And then Rolf can also,
See a map and.
Yep.
Is that?
Rolf can also weigh in then on Monday.
We'll have that
So
discussion.
he's seen the LOI, but I don't know if we've had any internal discussion, so.
Sounds good. We can discuss that on Monday night. Is that all right with the council?
Yes.
Okay. Item number 4 is an update on curling and equipment donations, and we'll call on Public Works Director Guy Taylor. Good morning, Guy.
Morning, thank you, Your Honor. We were approached by this citizen group to start a curling club back a couple months ago, and they are very active and have already started getting donations, and so we'd like for the city to accept all donations that come in for the purpose of purchasing curling equipment, with the hopes of having enough equipment to start the club up come October 1.
That's exciting. Thanks for your work with that group, Guy. To add another amenity to Fergus, and I know there's been a lot of talk for a dozen years or more about curling, and this group actually is taking it upon themselves, raising the money. So, and thanks for your work with to Mick and the people at the hockey arena, Pam, to work with them. So,
Will that be out at the arena then, that they will set that up?
It will be. It'll be in the North Rink, and it'll be Sunday evenings, afternoon into the evening, and then potentially into Monday if the school is interested in providing a
like an all-nighter type thing, Sunday into Monday.
Yeah, it could be. Potentially for FIAD for this.
So that equipment will have to be set up and then removed so the rink can be used for hockey then?
Yeah, and set up and getting the ice prepped is like an hour process. And one of the active members is Cameron Rittenauer from Comstock Construction.
Yep.
He has it down to a science. He knows exactly what to do. He's pretty high up in the leagues of curling and almost made it to the Olympics, I guess. But so he'll be helping teach our staff, and then we'll take it over after he's given our staff a good, thorough education on how to do it.
Alrighty.
So we need a motion to bring to the council to accept these donations. Would someone like to offer that?
I'll
Jim?
offer that.
Scott?
I'll second that.
Go ahead. Scott?
I think it's a good thing to see something like this coming. I've got a related question then on pickleball, earlier this year, there was some comments about that new courts being built, and I was wondering what the progress was on that. But we can move on this and then come back to that if you like.
No, it's fine, because I think that probably a pretty quick answer on that, right?
Sure, yeah. Pickleball courts will be in use probably midsummer, we're hoping. We're going to extend the tennis court at Athletic Park so that one or two tennis courts will be equate to 3 pickleball courts. So that'll be coming. We've got to extend the concrete and then get the playing surface put down and striped, and so there's some work to be done yet, but we're hoping, like I say, midsummer.
I saw some stakes and markings on the ground at NP Allen Magnuson Park last week, and I wondered if maybe something was happening over there that I didn't recognize, but maybe that was nothing to do with the city.
It is. It's part of the update to the playground area, just stakes for getting the grading done right in that area. Correct? Okay.
I guess the stakes I saw were over on the west side of it, not where the playground area is, and so that's why
I'm not familiar why there'd be stakes there.
I could hop in on that one.
Oh, okay.
The hospital's putting a tent up for the event this weekend, and so we needed to mark for Go
Oh,
First
it's the
State
run. Okay, very good.
Any other questions?
Get a well-rounded council. Very good. Not many questions go unanswered.
So we have a motion to bring this acceptance of the donations for curling equipment to the council on Monday night. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Guy. Next on the agenda is a discussion on the D Lagoon project and an update. And again, we'll call on Guy Taylor. And I think we have Kent Lawaji with us as well.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. So the city sought and obtained legislation to put a sales tax to the voters, a proposal, and that would be a project to basically do a renewal project at D Lagoon and to upgrade the campground facilities out there. We hired Bolton and Mink to put together some preliminary designs and plans, and they updated what was done a few years ago by Rosenbauer Associates to the campground master plan. So parts of the project that we've looked at are facility for concessions and bathroom at softball, just rebuilding that building, concessions and bathroom at the soccer field, water and sewer throughout the park, new lighting throughout the park, and fencing, and then the campground total reconstruction. So Kent, like you said, is online, and he's going to go through some details of the project. Thanks for joining us, Kent.
Morning, Kent.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Len. So, as Len summarized there, we've looked at kind of cost improvements to all of those features within the park. And in the second page of the memo that's included in your packet, we do have a summary of those estimated costs. The improvements to the campground itself, following the master plan, are estimated at about $2.4 million. The sewer and water utility extensions throughout the park are estimated at about $1.1 million. The concessions and restroom buildings at both the softball field and the soccer field are estimated at $1.2 million. Lighting improvements throughout the sites are estimated at $3.1, and fencing improvements are estimated at about $900,000. So you add those 5 kind of major components together, we come up with about $8.7 million in improvements. When we discussed this with the park board last Monday, the discussion there led towards kind of trimming that down, of course, to match up with the budgeted amount of $5.2 million. And the direction from the park board was to look at completing the campground master plan updates and the utility expansions. So those first 2 numbers are listed, and then handling the remainder of the improvements locally as time and budget allows. So if we look at just those first 2, the total estimated cost is just under $4.2 million. So to recap, that's updates to the campground following the master plan and the sewer and water utility extensions throughout the site. further on in the packet, we do have kind of more detailed cost breakdowns for each of those described improvements, as well as a map showing where the utility extensions would occur.
Thanks, Kent.
You bet.
So, the sewer and water extension, is that primarily to benefit, I mean, it benefits everyone out there, but is the campground ultimately the end user with water and sewer and showers and bathrooms?
Yeah, you're right, it's for every use out there, but yeah, the campground right now is not in compliance with the Department of Health with the lack of facilities out there.
Sure. And then when, if we looked at, like other projects, I don't know, when we've done other parks, is the water and sewer, is that like a associated project cost as opposed to a separate, you know what I mean? Sometimes sewer and water is its own separate entity out of this different, out of the sewer and water fund?
Part of the project. For the most, I mean, when we're doing reconstructions and things, of course, then we're using our water and sewer fund, but something new like this, I think part of the project does make sense.
Sure. So you're looking for direction as far as what, and it's, did you say it's at 3.5, I think, for the, I don't have the memo in front of me. 3.5?
4.3-ish for the first two.
Okay.
4.1, 4.3, something like that.
So the 2.4 and 1.1, right? Isn't that 3.5?
Says 4.1, 4 million, 61.
I suppose there's an engineering cost.
Included in that 4.2 million that Kent cited was 633,000 for a soccer field concession and restroom building.
Oh, so that one is in there.
The park board wanted to leave that out, but we're showing here that you could accomplish that as well and still be at that $4.2 million mark
I see.
within the $5.2 million.
That's what, the second set of things here, yeah. Well, personally, I agree with the staff memo here that it's important to have that soccer concession. That was part of the discussion all along. I think to get some sort of upgrade to the soccer, I mean, I understand the water and sewer is a need, but I don't know, I think we need to show some improvements out there as part of it, but that's, again, ultimately the voters are going to decide on this anyway. But what's the wish of the council? Does the council like the breakdown of the project as it's in the memo?
Well, I just have a question too to your question about the water and sewer. I mean, so it sounds like that wouldn't come out of the sewer fund and that would come out of a sales tax to pay for, or would that, I mean, would we pay?
Sales tax is what's proposed here.
And that's how we do it on, I mean, we wouldn't have it come out of the sewer and water fund on a new construction in general, anywhere else in the city? Because to me, I think, I mean, that's a huge need too. If we're gonna attract people and do this remodel to attract people out there, but we don't have proper sewer and water, I feel like to accommodate that, I don't know, it's just too bad it's that big a number and throws this off, but I think we need that. Somehow we need to find a way to, if it's not in this request, if the project gets voted and goes through, I think we need to find a way then to come up with a difference.
And us as staff, let's talk about that a little bit before Monday. And Brian, I'll look to you. We could talk, thinking about other projects. I mean, this, I'm kind of thinking of it as that park structure out there, why of having that in the sales tax versus putting that in and taking from water and sewer instead. Let's think through that a little bit. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Well, in
Rambling
general,
more.
extensions are usually through a petition project, so it's usually 100% bore by
The project?
the user that's requesting it, so, but it's up to the council and how they want to.
If this is a city project, maybe we leverage, maybe there's a way to look at leveraging some of the sales tax dollars with water and sewer. Maybe you can just,
Certainly would have the legal authority to use water and sewer for that because those are water and sewer lines. It's an extension of the system, so I mean, certainly have the ability to do that.
I just think if it's passed by the voters and the voters want to do it, we have to try to get the biggest bang for our buck out there, right? And like, the campground is a huge improvement. But there's also other needs, obviously the restrooms at the softball complex, the lighting, all of it is age. So how do we I guess it's just an ongoing discussion, but ultimately the voters will decide, right? Scott, go ahead.
The point of the sales tax is to make it, is because it's a regional project. I mean, it's fact that the city could pay for it, well, the city could pay for it, but the goal here is not only to draw people in, but to then see some additional benefit to the city from drawing people in. And that benefit would be at least partially realized by picking up some of that sales tax money as people come. So I think it's still appropriate to try and fund as much of this as we can with the sales tax. That's how this kind of got rolling in the first place, as far as the funding package for it. It's unfortunate that as it is with a lot of things, you can spend a lot of time and money on things that you can't see. So we go and we put all these pipes in the ground, and people look out there and they say, spend all this money, I don't see anything. And so to that point, I think, Ben, your comment that we really need to include that restroom concession building at the soccer field is important. There's got to be something standing there after all this money is spent to say, we did something. And, somebody will surely say, well, that's a $4 million, restroom building, and that's just kind of the loops you got to jump through to explain it. But half of this is going to the campground master plan updates. It's, as Guy said, it's not in compliance now. That's the biggest component of trying to draw people in as a regional thing. I think the work they've done to try and find something that fits within what we were hoping to spend is good, and we should move with what they've provided here.
Sure. All right, so we could, go ahead, Caroline.
So, yeah, maybe I'm just not understanding and could use a little more clarification on the total estimated project cost of that 8.7, the whole project itself. It says sewer, water, utility extensions at that 1.137. Then down below on the one that we're looking at, it says just utility extensions, and that's 1.137 as well. So am I not understanding correctly that the sewer and water is in that project? Or?
Yeah, those are the same thing. The description just varied a little bit between the two. The bottom total is sewer and water.
So there is sewer and water in that project? Okay.
Yep.
Sure. Justin?
Maybe last question for me is, and this is for staff guy, I think I maybe mentioned this or asked this, Ottawa Power is invested in city streetlights and we are leasing it, right? As I understand that throughout the city. In the lighting project here, could there be any discussion to partner? Because by looking at the bottom number, that's what's taken out. Is that something, we could see if they'd be willing to kind of do what they did similar throughout the city?
We've looked into that some, and they don't have any programs for sports field lighting.
Has to be residential.
Even their rebate program doesn't cross over to sports field lighting. So we're looking at some other ways to do it piecemeal.
Okay.
Do the priority fields first, and maybe even hopefully get some lighting up at soccer on one of the fields at some point. And just a note on that concessions restroom building for soccer. The park board felt that it's definitely a priority. It was just felt that it could be done for quite a bit less than what was estimated, and we could do it maybe even within our staff capabilities. So do it a lot cheaper.
Okay. So staff kind of talk about this a little more internally, what some different options are, and is that what you thought, Bill? Bring this maybe slightly modified, but further discussion at the council on Monday night. Would someone like to move that we bring this to the council for additional discussion?
I'll offer that.
Thanks, Caroline.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Justin. Any other questions of Kent or city staff? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thanks, Kent.
Thank you.
Last item on the agenda that I'm aware of is a permanent supportive housing project update. I'll call on Michael Olson from the Fergus Falls HRA. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council. Good morning, staff. Thanks for getting me on the agenda. I thought it would be a nice time here just to give a little update on our project. Unfortunately, we're a bit behind. I dropped a bit of a summary off in front of you this morning when I got here. So just to get everybody up to speed, I guess, on where we're at with our development, and looking back a few years, the group that's working on this project met for the first time in early 2019. I've maybe talked about that briefly, but just to give an idea on the amount of time it takes for a project like this to come together between the needs analysis and the applications for funding and the drawings and approvals and et cetera. So fast forwarding a bit to 2022, we went out for bid in March. We had 4 good bids come back, all slightly over budget. Over the course of, I would say, the remainder of March, we did a pretty extensive run at value engineering. So really tore back through all of our plans and specifications, reached out to some local contractors to see if there was any value, with other vendors and other contractors. And we found a significant number of items where we could save some money on. We brought that list back down to Minnesota Housing Finance Agency and had their staff run through the items that we had made suggestions on, and I suppose about 60 to 70% of those value engineering items were ultimately accepted. One of the things that Minnesota Housing looks at when they finance a project is the long-term durability of a project. And so, one of the items we looked at was adding vinyl siding to the project, thinking there would be significant savings, and there was. But the financier looked at that and said, well, we know vinyl siding isn't quite as durable, and we don't think this is a good spot to save dollars on. So we've wrestled back and forth on that. We've come to a new number, and now we have our final documents in place going to mortgage credit. So Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, as they look through those items, they're about a 90 to maybe up to 120 days to get through closing, which would put us to a potential groundbreaking of September of this year. So I hesitate to say this because the last thing I really want to look at is the potential for additional delays. But one of the conversations that I initiated just a couple of weeks ago with Minnesota Housing is, what does it look like for us to push this out into 2023 for a groundbreaking? We've got rising interest rates, and we've got pretty volatile material pricing yet, and some different things going on in the market. And of course, I think what we all recognize is probably over the last 2+ years, we've had volatile markets and material shortages and contractor shortages and et cetera. So kind of wrestling right now with what's the best option here. Do we look at a fall groundbreaking and deal with some of the things that Mother Nature can throw at us starting in September and October and getting worse from there? Or do we wait and try and start in the spring and see what, material prices do, if there's a potential increase again like we've seen recently, or what? So kind of working through some things. I guess really what I wanted to bring to council this morning is that, the project is still very active. Once we get through closing, groundbreaking and starting the project really can occur on our timeline. And so it's likely that we'll see something yet this fall. However, we could see something push out for a spring start. So the second page of your handout is a thank you letter that we've been distributing, and we've been using that primarily with our service provider group that we're working with. And so in April, we sent that thank you out to everyone, and really it was an acknowledgement of the effort that's gone into this project over the last 3-ish years, and kind of an opportunity, I guess, for folks that have been working with us to re-engage amongst their staff and see who else maybe has, input for our group and wants to attend monthly meetings and keep working through the process. So I feel really good about where this is at. I've been uncharacteristically optimistic about this project since 2019. Even as we've gone through some of our delays with the awarding of bonds to project acceptance, working through mortgage credit and things now, there has been no shortage of delays. Some of that with COVID, some of it just natural on this type of a project. But there's no doubt that we're moving forward. So, any questions this morning?
Thanks for the update, Michael.
thanks.
Anyone have any questions for Michael? Yeah, Scott.
For what it's worth, I'd encourage you to keep moving and start this fall if you can.
There you have it.
Lots of reasons that people can say we should wait, but just keep plowing ahead. I'd say keep going.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Any other words of encouragement this morning for Michael? Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Update I have is the chamber refresh at 2:30 tomorrow, right, Lisa?
VIP session is at 2:30 tomorrow. The general session starts at 3:30.
That's at a
For the arts.
Center for the Arts, 3:30 tomorrow. Public's
Wrapped up by 5 o'clock, so everyone can enjoy the late to late in the downtown walk park.
perfect. Andrew?
Yeah, Your Honor, maybe put Councilmember Kwame on the spot. He had mentioned to me a few weeks ago, if we have time at a committee meeting, he'd like to discuss the policy related to painting sharrows on the streets, and I think this is a good time to do it if the council is willing to stick around for a few more minutes.
Yeah, since we don't have that planning commission deal till 8, I guess there's a few minutes. Is that all right?
Perfectly fine with me.
Got 30 seconds.
Okay, well, I can give you just a brief intro as far as that goes. I live around Lake Alice, and so the area that caught my attention is the fact that we've got sharrows painted on the street around Lake Alice, and then on the south end of Lake Alice where the utility and road improvements were done several years ago to, resurface and rebuild that section. There's a portion of it that has a double yellow line stripe that is assumed to mean the division between the walking and the driving lanes. The practical reality of how those painted markings have been used on Lake Alice is they're ignored, they're meaningless, and they accomplish no good purpose because people ride their bikes anywhere they want to ride their bikes, and having directional sharrows aren't going to make them go in a different direction. And the double yellow line, having that only on a portion of the lake and not all the way around, it's either have the whole thing or don't have it at all. I think it's not useful, not helpful to have it in just a portion of it. And to what degree that is a cost factor to either paint or not, it seems to me that it's at least several hundred, if not a few $1,000s to do the painting of all of that with labor and materials. And as we're looking for ways to save some money, it's maybe one small area where we could save a little and maybe put it towards something else and, curling supplies or something, whether it's streets and parks and stuff like that. There's probably other areas in town as well where, the sharrows, as we've tried to implement them in various places, maybe they're helpful, maybe they're not. In this specific area around Lake Alice, I don't find that they're particularly helpful, and I think we could, just take them off the list of what gets updated on an annual basis. And if anyone else had some other areas where they thought we could make some adjustments, whether it's striping or sharrows or whatever, that was what I was hoping to introduce as far as a topic of discussion.
Thanks.
Maybe
Scott.
just ask or add this. You live on the lake, so certainly not second guessing, but I've driven on it. I've seen quite a few people walking, and they use it. My assumption is that in that south corridor, the road got wider and it accommodates for painted lines and be able to drive, whereas other parts of that lake haven't been updated. It's not wide enough, I think, to accommodate what you're saying is doing it all around the lake. That'd be my guess, just from driving it a few times, but I don't know if that's...
Yeah, that doesn't appear to be the case. It's about the same width, if not even narrower in some places where the striping is as to where it is not. So I don't see that it really adds any... It maybe even gives somebody kind of a false sense of security, like I'm in my walking lane now, but cars are over there all the time, because you got to go around parked cars, you got to jump from one side to the other as dogs are coming and going, and I don't see it being helpful.
Parking's restricted on the south side, making it appear to be wider, I think.
Makes sense.
Yeah, the biggest thing to me that I notice is just the speed. Sometimes the speed of the cars is still faster than it's posted. But, I don't know. City staff, do you guys have any?
It definitely would be a time saver to not have to do those sharrows. So translating into savings, you're right. So, and I agree, walk it a lot, and they're not being followed at all. And I'd say the same for walkers. They're going to walk whatever they want. But lane doesn't really.
Caroline?
Obviously, I think this is a topic for the bike ped committee too, and I have a feeling that I know what their feelings would be on it. But if there's a way to compromise, because Lake Alice in itself, like you guys said, people are going to walk or ride their bike in almost any direction that they want. I think Sharrows and the double line help drivers be aware that there's people out there. I mean, everyone that lives in Fergus, we know or we assume that there's going to be pedestrians out there. We also have a lot of visitors too, and I think it's a safety thing in some sort to have either signage or Sharrows or something out there to make sure everyone is aware of everyone too.
Thanks for that, Caroline. How often does it get painted? Once every couple years?
Every year.
Every year? And when is that? Is that in
It'll be probably midsummer.
midsummer? Brent?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Scott on this one. I'm not a favor of Sharrows in most of the areas, and he brought up the one word that I always say, it's a false sense of security. And in this case, I've driven around Lake Alice many times, and I just don't feel there's a need to have them there. And I understand they put them in there at the same time when we voted on over by the other side over there.
West Side Drive.
Yeah, because that was kind of both done at the same time, because Rod wanted it so we could get people off that main speed road, which is now, we've dropped it down to 35. And we've gotten them over there and dragged them over the path, so I don't have a problem with leaving it over there. But I'd like to see them taken off even downtown. So it's a false sense of security as far as what I'm concerned.
Thanks, Brent. Well, maybe I think to Caroline's point and to maybe we get the input of any committees that we have, Park and Rec Board or the Bike Ped Committee, and before the next decision's made to go out and stripe, we can have that discussion with all the input. I appreciate you bringing this forward, and I appreciate the comments, Brent. And council just make a simple decision based on the information, whether or not we're going to continue the Sharrows downtown. I think it's downtown, for the most part, it's downtown Lake Alice is the corridor where the Sharrows are, correct?
Yeah, and then the West Side Drive.
Yeah. So, all right, simple as that, right? We'll get that information and bring it back and make a decision before you go out for the contract to paint.
Yeah, the Sharrows would be done midsummer by our staff. The walking lane, that's done by the striper that does all the streets, so I'm not sure the timeline on that.
Sure.
It's Brian's guy that does that.
You have to look into it.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll ask those committees and have that discussion. Yeah, Scott?
Another question, different topic. If you got a minute.
Yeah, yep, I'm gonna get kids to school by 8, so I'm not waiting for the planning commission at 8 exactly, but okay. Go ahead. But go ahead.
The question is, we've got those two projects, the Day Lagoon project and the Aquatic Center, that were to go to the sales tax on the vote this fall. And now I'm just looking for some kind of a update as far as the legislative session coming to an end and bonding projects not getting passed and stuff. Is there some relationship there? Will what's happened in the legislature stall our efforts to bring us to the vote in November for the Aquatic Center in Day Lagoon? Or are those still moving ahead as we expected? Is there any relationship there?
Yeah, Your Honor, Councilmember Kwame, we're going to have to make those decisions here in fairly short order. As you all know, there wasn't a bonding bill, there wasn't a tax bill, there wasn't a lot of activity at all that came out of the legislature, and there are some deadlines we have to meet to get things on the ballot. So what I'm going to dive into this week is how we can get these things in alignment. We have the prospect of a special legislative session hanging over our heads, and we're confident that if that happens, our desires will be within those bills and we'll be successful. But if that doesn't happen on a timeline that aligns with the need to get these things on the ballot, we have a little bit of a challenge. I'm not worried about D Lagoon. The $5.2 million is there. We have the authorization. We weren't looking to move that authorization, so we have what we need there, and we had that good discussion earlier today. The Aquatic Center is a little more challenging. We have authorization for $7.8 million today from the last legislative session. We were looking to move that number to $9.9 million and have redesigned a project to fit that budget. The actual language within the tax bill, should it be approved, is adding $3 million. So they kind of gave us more than we were asking for, or they're proposing to give us more. So it'll go up to $10.8 million rather than $9.9 million, and I think that little cushion is good for us. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't have a tax bill, I don't have a good answer for you, because $7.8 million doesn't get a $9.9 million project done. So the committee's meeting on Friday to discuss, kind of what to do, but I just keep delivering bad news to that committee, and I'm afraid to do that again. But the reality is the stars haven't aligned on that, and it's really a challenging place to be. But if the special session happens in short order and we're able to get that legislative approval prior to this timeline related to the ballot question, we'll be just fine. Then we proceed with the project that's been designed. But we're going to have some decisions to make here in the coming weeks.
But basically, if there is no special session, we either have no project for at least 2 years, or we have to scale back to something significantly smaller than what we were hoping to do.
I would say that's accurate, but I don't know how we would do that in the timeline that we have. We'd have to spend additional money to rescope it again, and then we'd have to do it in relatively short order to be able to show the residents what they're actually going to vote on in November. So the best case scenario is getting a special session with a tax bill and being able to let the voters decide locally. But I don't have great news on that particular
No crystal
project.
ball on the special session question. Gotcha.
Yeah, so.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Scott. And with that, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Apparently I didn't understand
That one. Clara?
Yes.
Please.
Yeah.
I got this.
I don't think he explained it very well.
So when is it? Drive more people up there, we're not gonna have to cancel.
Oh, okay.
So